Welcome to UK Worlds, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. In January 2026, the world was stunned as US forces under President Trump captured Venezuela's President Maduro in a dramatic military raid. The operation unfolded live on global news, sending shockwaves through international capitals and leaving millions glued to their screens. The US wasted no time, swiftly announcing plans to seize control of Venezuela's vast oil industry. American companies were invited to revitalize the battered sector, promising a new era of energy dominance in the Western Hemisphere. For the United States, this was about more than just oil. It was about securing a new, nearby energy source and reshaping the balance of power in global energy markets. For Canada, it was an economic earthquake. The news sent markets tumbling and left Canadian business leaders scrambling to assess the fallout. Canada's economy had long depended on exporting oil to the US, a relationship that now looked dangerously fragile. With years of investment and infrastructure suddenly at risk, overnight, Washington's pivot to Venezuelan oil threatened to sideline Canadian crude, sending shockwaves through Ottawa and especially Alberta, where thousands of jobs hung in the balance. Prime Minister Carney, caught abroad at a critical moment, faced a crisis that demanded immediate action and decisive leadership. The US move wasn't a temporary disruption, it was a fundamental shift in the global energy order, with ripple effects reaching far beyond North America. Canada's most valuable export was at risk, and the government had to act fast to protect jobs, economic stability, and the livelihoods of countless families. The comfortable certainty of the North American energy market was gone, replaced by anxiety and urgent questions about the future. Carney's government now faced a stark ultimatum: adapt quickly, or face a period of economic decline that could reshape the nation's future. The challenge was clear: how to secure the future of Canadian oil when its biggest customer was looking elsewhere, and time was running out. Waiting was not an option. Every hour counted as the crisis deepened and uncertainty grew. Canada needed a bold, immediate plan, one that could rally the nation and reassure global partners. This crisis would test the government's leadership and force a complete rethink of Canada's trade and energy strategy, demanding innovation and unity. Navigating this new reality would require tough political choices, new international partnerships, and a willingness to break from the past. The race to secure Canada's economic future had begun, and the stakes had never been higher. Venezuela holds the world's largest proven oil reserves, over 300 billion barrels, a staggering figure that dwarfs even Saudi Arabia's. This immense resource has long been a sleeping giant in the global oil market, waiting for the right moment to awaken. For years, political chaos, economic mismanagement, and strict international sanctions kept this oil locked away underground. But recent US intervention and shifting diplomatic strategies have promised to change that, opening the door for renewed production and exports. With fresh American investment and expertise, Venezuela's oil industry could surge back to life, threatening Canada's hard-won position as a top supplier to US refineries and potentially reshaping North American energy dynamics. Both Venezuela and Canada produce heavy crude, which is especially prized by US Gulf Coast refineries designed to process this dense, sticky oil. The competition is direct and fierce. A revitalized Venezuela offers American buyers a closer, potentially cheaper alternative to Canadian oil, with shorter shipping routes and lower transportation costs. Analysts warn that Venezuelan output could double or even triple in the coming years, flooding a market that Canada once dominated and driving down prices for everyone. Prime Minister Carney acknowledged the looming economic danger. Every new Venezuelan barrel could mean one less sold from Canada, putting pressure on Canadian producers and government revenues. The US market, once a sure thing for Canadian oil, was now a battleground where every contract and shipment was up for grabs. Canadian oil faced the real risk of being stranded, with prices depressed and thousands of jobs potentially lost in the process. Shipping from Venezuela is not only cheaper, but also easier than moving Canadian oil through crowded, often congested pipelines that snake across the continent. Canada's logistical disadvantages were now glaring, with infrastructure bottlenecks making it harder to compete on a level playing field. Friendship and proximity no longer guaranteed sales. The old certainties of the oil trade were vanishing fast. Canada now had to compete on price, reliability, and access in a far tougher, more unpredictable market than ever before. With the U.S. market closing, Prime Minister Carney declared Canada must urgently diversify its oil exports. Asia, with its booming economies, became the obvious target. This wasn't just a reaction, it was a long overdue strategy for economic survival. Expanding into Asia would make Canada's energy sector more resilient and give it leverage in global pricing. Political leaders across the spectrum agreed. The era of complacency was over. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre demanded immediate action to open new export routes. The government needed to move fast, building infrastructure, cutting red tape, and forging new trade relationships. The path was daunting, requiring new pipelines, regulatory approvals, and massive investment. Success meant convincing Asian buyers that Canada could be a reliable, long-term partner. The clock was ticking for Carney to turn this vision into reality. The centerpiece of Carney's plan was a new pipeline to the Pacific coast, a lifeline to Asian markets. The existing Trans Mountain pipeline couldn't handle the needed volume. A second larger pipeline was essential. This project would be privately funded, aiming to avoid taxpayer risk and political controversy. Ottawa's new Major Projects Office was set up to fast-track approvals and attract investors. A landmark agreement with Alberta tied the pipeline to the Pathways Alliance carbon capture project, blending economic and environmental goals. The timeline was aggressive. A formal application by mid-2026 with construction to follow swiftly. The urgency was clear. Canada had to move before Venezuelan oil flooded the market. Success would redraw Canada's energy map, finally connecting Alberta's oil to the world's fastest-growing economies. This pipeline was Canada's best hope to escape its economic crisis. The stakes couldn't be higher. A key innovation in the pipeline plan was genuine Indigenous partnership. Unlike past projects, this pipeline offered First Nations co-ownership and a real stake in its success. This approach aimed to turn opposition into shared prosperity, ensuring economic benefits and a say in governance. Co-ownership was both a matter of justice and a practical way to secure support and avoid legal delays. Alongside this, the project was tied to aggressive carbon capture efforts, aiming to make Canadian oil among the world's cleanest. The dual focus, Indigenous equity and decarbonization, was central to Carney's pitch to global buyers. The goal, a greener, more inclusive barrel of oil, attractive to investors and international markets. This model aimed to solve the political, social, and environmental challenges that had long plagued Canadian energy. Canada was betting that sustainability and partnership would be its competitive edge. The crisis unleashed fierce political pressure in Ottawa. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre demanded the pipeline be approved within 60 days, framing delay as economic sabotage. He highlighted divisions within the Liberal caucus, painting Carney as indecisive. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith joined the call, insisting the federal government clear the way for construction. The opposition in Alberta formed a powerful front, demanding immediate action. Any hesitation would be seen as a failure of leadership. Carney was now in a political crucible, forced to act decisively amid intense scrutiny. With the U.S. market in jeopardy, Carney launched a high-stakes diplomatic mission to China. The stakes were enormous, as Canada urgently needed to diversify its energy exports and find new partners willing to invest in its future. He became the first Canadian Prime Minister in nearly a decade to visit Beijing, seeking a major new buyer for Canadian oil. The visit was carefully choreographed, signaling a willingness to reset relations and open a new chapter in bilateral trade. The goal: secure China as a long-term customer and guarantee demand for the new Pacific Pipeline, a project critical to Canada's economic ambitions. The timing was critical. Canada needed China, but also offered a stable, low-carbon energy supply. Both sides knew the window for a deal could close quickly if global conditions shifted. Carney's pitch: Canadian oil could help China reduce its reliance on unstable suppliers while meeting climate goals. He emphasized Canada's commitment to responsible energy production and environmental standards. The visit built on recent momentum, including record oil shipments to China via the expanded Trans Mountain pipeline, which had just begun to demonstrate its strategic value. The relationship was still fragile after years of diplomatic tension, but energy needs trumped old grievances. Both governments recognized the mutual benefits of cooperation, despite lingering mistrust. For Canada, a deal with China would provide market certainty and attract private investment, fueling growth in the energy sector and beyond. For China, it meant a secure, G7-sourced supply, an opportunity to strengthen its own energy security and diversify imports. The outcome of this mission could shape Canada's economy for decades, influencing jobs, investment, and the country's global standing. Success was far from guaranteed, but the risks and the potential rewards had never been higher. Carney's China trip wasn't just about oil, it was a bid to reset the entire trade relationship. The goal doubled Canada's non-US exports in 10 years, making China a cornerstone of that strategy. Talks covered agriculture, with Carney pushing to end Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola, a major win for prairie farmers. He also sought greater access for Canadian consumer brands, aiming to diversify beyond raw materials. The visit aimed to build a more balanced, resilient partnership, less vulnerable to single-issue disputes. Security and diplomatic cooperation were also on the agenda, signaling a desire for broader engagement. While disagreements remained, Carney's strategy was to find common ground and stabilize relations. In a world of shifting alliances, a stable relationship with China was now a strategic necessity. Canada could no longer afford to rely on the US alone. The Venezuela crisis forced Canada to confront its dependence on a single trading partner. Carney's response, fast-tracking a Pacific pipeline and pivoting to China, was about reclaiming economic sovereignty. The strategy linked energy security, trade diversification, and environmental innovation. By connecting Alberta's oil to Asia, Canada was breaking free from US constraints. Indigenous co-ownership and carbon capture made Canadian oil more competitive and sustainable. The world was changing. Canada had to adapt or fall behind. The crisis was a painful catalyst, but it pushed Canada toward a more independent, resilient future. The path forward would define the nation's prosperity for decades to come.